Any possible thing, no matter how improbable, that could happen after I did something was my fault. What traits or things do you hope not to carry on from your mother if you become a parent? I would let my kids have friends over either to play or stay the night. I missed out on a lot because my mum was too ashamed of the house we lived in. I'm still mad at my mom for it, and it's been years. I always want to have sleepovers and hang out with friends because I don't really get to do that. But my mom is always refusing because she says I shouldn't be going to people's houses. Like, what? I get she is overprotective, but I'm never going to have some fun in my life if she keeps thinking I'll get kidnapped or something if I go to someone else's house. It's really frustrating because I've rarely gotten sleepovers at others for so long because my mom is so overprotective. I will never have children, but I would not constantly try to talk my children out of their feelings. Gratitude is great, don't get me wrong, but it is okay and valid to be upset. It is okay to not smile all the time. A huge part of why my marriage failed is because when I was upset, I had no idea how to even communicate that. I squashed it down, and I forced myself to be happy. When I couldn't do that anymore, I just stonewalled him because I didn't even know how to talk about being upset because no reason ever felt good enough. It is pretty messed up to basically teach your children that their feelings just shouldn't be felt. Somebody replied, as an adult, I can see that it's a trickle down from my mom, not feeling comfortable expressing feelings because she was handling her own stuff, but this really did a number on me. I've had to work pretty hard to not be angry at myself for having feelings, or even allowing myself to acknowledge how I'm feeling. It's also incredibly easy to be emotionally abused by people when you don't know your own feelings, because you're a prime target for gaslighting. I feel so frustrated for not having developed this basic life skill earlier on, but also glad I've had the support to work on it as an adult. My mom used to and still does favor my brother, so obviously even her co-workers asked if she likes me. My mom also parentified me early in that I took care of her while sick, cooked, cleaned all starting at age 9, and then I paid bills, rent included, and worked when I was 15. My brother never had to do these things. Last, my mom told me too much. She would tell me we're in debt, and losing our home, and her boss is harassing her, and what type of men she prefers. All just TMI. I felt like her diary since I was 4 years old. I won't favor one of my children, alienating another. My children will learn to care for themselves, but they will never need to care for me, not even in old age. They are not born to be my caretakers. I will treat our relationship as parent and child. I will not overshare in an attempt to make my child my best friend. I'll recognize children cannot emotionally process adult stress and try to share only what's needed. Somebody replied, that's a beautiful thought, that you're not saddling your kids with your needs even as an elderly person. I don't mind taking care of my parents, but I don't want it to end up being a loveless burden that I carry out of obligation. If I do end up in a situation where I do have to take care of my parents, then I want to do so with the ability to not be stretched beyond my breaking point, out of a feeling of love, and not guilt-tripping. I'm in pre-med. My mom jokes about me buying Prada handbags for her, sometimes with my first paycheck. While I do understand that doctors make a lot of money, hopefully, eventually, I erg. As a teen, once I lashed out, saying how expensive that was, and how I would be trying to save up for a house, and my own needs, and she took that as offensive, and told me after that conversation that she was considering moving back to her home country once I graduated, if I didn't care for them. There are so many, but a few. No to body weight shaming. Or to demonizing food. I teach my girls health and self-acceptance by not talking SHT about my body and modeling being active with healthy eating habits that includes all kinds of food. My daughters are free to express their thoughts and respectfully disagree with their father and I. They are individuals, human beings who we respect as such. I never lay hands on my daughters. I refuse to normalize that someone who is supposed to love them will do that. Affection. I openly dote on them and affirm them. What's important to them is important to me. I encourage autonomy and independence, but I want them to know that as long as I'm alive, they will never have to do or go through things alone. They can count on me to show up for them. I ensure they know they are not a chore to me. I feel honored that I get to know and raise them. I apologize and hold myself accountable to them. My mom has body image issues and I'm grateful every day she didn't unload them on me and my sister with diets and food restriction. It was all passive stuff. Of course there are remarks that I don't think she realizes are hurtful, like at this Easter when she, an average-sized middle-aged woman, told her husband to make sure she didn't look fat in the picture. She was standing next to me and my sister, significantly heavier than my mom. I was telling her that I was listening to a podcast, Maintenance Phase, that was talking about Oprah and her wheelbarrow of fat. She said, well, she needed to lose weight. Did you see how fat she was? I didn't tell her that Oprah's reported highest weight was 5 pounds less than my highest weight. Maybe I should have. Somebody replied, my mom is the same way. She's a totally average-sized woman and I'm pretty overweight. She's always getting down on herself for her weight and it grates on me even though she's never shamed me for my appearance, although she does express concern for my health, and to be fair I do have other health issues. Maybe I should tell her she shouldn't make those comments to around me. I really don't think she understands it does affect me. And on top of that it's just not healthy to talk to yourself that way. I don't want to be fully dependent on a man like my mother. She can't use GPS to navigate and only knows how to drive to a few places by heart. She doesn't know how to use the internet to purchase things. She doesn't pay bills. If my dad passes before her, she won't be able to fend for herself. And that's why she's stuck in a loveless marriage. I want to show my son what a loving household is and what it means for an adult to, adult. Self-sufficiency is so important. Somebody replied, this is my wife. She doesn't want to do things on her own. I've been trying so hard to make her independent, for example, by mentioning to her how she would survive if I died today. She can't even order food on her own. My patience isn't infinite. I'm human. I've thought of getting a divorce once or twice already due to these things. Somebody replied, I may not have the right to speak on the situation as I'm not married, but I was in the same situation as you are with my boyfriend. I put him in situations where he had to step up and be independent or he wouldn't get what he wanted. For example, he's hungry and I'm too depressed to cook. YouTube an easy meal or you won't eat, and the next time I'm in the kitchen, come cook with me so you can learn how to prepare this meal. Part of me feels like it's not right to take on the parental role in a sense, but I love him, and it hurts to see them become so dependent to the point that they can't function without you. You got this. It was definitely frustrating, but I didn't give up on him. He's made so much progress since and I've even learned stuff from him as well. You have to look out for yourself too though, but don't give up hope just yet. Sending love. Perfectionism. I want my child to try hard but also accept that perfection is not always possible and that's okay. No one is perfect and not to stress if things don't work out. That they are enough just the way they are. My mom once said you'd be so beautiful if you just lost some weight, and the pain I felt was awful. I will encourage my kids to be healthy but also love themselves. My mother was very controlling academically. I was never allowed to take the courses I wanted to. She had to approve everything. She would read my essays to edit them and rewrite almost the entire thing. She was also really strict on how we interacted with other people. Once when I was a teenager, we were at a barbecue for her work. Someone had brought a box of 100 freezies. There were maybe 20 of us, so after we all had one I asked for another one. She scolded me in front of everyone, to the point where her co-worker pulled me aside later and said she thought my mom was too strict. Basically, I want to be kinder and softer than she was. I barely ever felt like I could go to her with my problems, and that's something I would be desperate to give my kids. Somebody replied, I feel you on this. My mom micromanaged my school growing up. She was a teacher. She would take my homework and rewrite it or correct things without me knowing. I pursued subjects she didn't know anything about as I got older to get away from it. It had such an impact on my self-esteem because I got to make mistakes and learn and figure out how to do better. She didn't want me to learn. She wanted my teachers to think I, and by extension, she, was perfect. My mom is still controlling about how I interact with others. I think she has social anxiety, but she can't just chill around people and is obsessed with people thinking her family is perfect. As a kid, she would yell at me if I wasn't smiling at a family event. She didn't ask if I was sad or whatever, just got mad. She is still very uncomfortable to be around in social situations because she still does this. To be honest, I avoid most social situations with her because of it. Just relating. Somebody replied, "Oh wow, you just unlocked the memory of my family all gathered around the dinner table and my mom pointing out which kid got the A- or B+ instead of straight A's. We've worked hard to make sure our son knows that we care if he's learning and understanding schoolwork, but the grade itself doesn't matter. Maybe he'll escape the perfectionism I fight against daily." I don't plan on being a mother myself, but my best friend and I have talked about me helping her out and being around her and her kid a lot when that time comes. Like an advanced aunt role. Mainly, I don't want to emulate the fear and anxiety that I picked up from my mom. It's not my mom's fault, she was just doing her best with the resources she had, but I realized after seeing her for the first time in a while that so much of my anxiety is learned from her. As a kid, everything was a big deal, and if something went wrong, she'd really externalize all of her negative emotions. It was a lot of stuff like slamming cabinets and dishes in the kitchen, physically pacing, getting angry and snappy over unrelated things, becoming hypercritical, etc. As I've become an adult, it's been weird to realize a lot of these things just aren't that big of a deal, and I don't have to be anxious or respond like that. It's so weird, I feel somehow guilty for not being anxious about a doctor's appointment. Like if I'm not anxious, that means I'm not fully prepared or don't care. It's a pain in the ass to try and detangle these misperceptions as an adult, so I definitely wouldn't want to pass them on again. Somebody replied, "It's so hard to break away from the examples you were shown growing up. You're really self-aware, and I liked that you said that it wasn't healthy, but your parents were working with the resources they had. But it doesn't have to be passed on." I was having a similar thought about a lot of my anxiety being learned, and I'm trying to find out how I actually feel would respond to something, rather than emulating what my parents did. I internalize their anxiety as good for some reason, but I don't think a lot of it is mine. A lot of these are the toxic traits they don't want to repeat. Meanwhile, I just want to make sure I have close friends and hang out with people, and have more experiences. My mom doesn't have any buddies and never really did, minus work acquaintances, and doesn't really leave the house much on her own. I feel like my mom doesn't have much independence or a social life. I think it's important your kids see you enjoying life and people too. Somebody replied, "I would like to say this, but even before having kids I can already notice myself mimicking his behavior. I have very few friends. The ones I made more recently, I've dropped them. I hang out with 2 or 3 people from my childhood sporadically and with my boyfriend's group of friends a lot, but only because of him. I am not close to any family. I would like to know a way to overcome this, but I'm seldom interested in people and even more rarely does it last. I hope that if I have children, my boyfriend's trait of being very close to his friends will pass on better than my opposite one." This is a conversation that I have quite often with my husband. I just picked some highlights. No emotional manipulation. I'm about to turn 31 and my mom pulled another one of these stunts just 2 days ago. I used to fall for them, used to be upset by them. Now I'm just disappointed that I could actually predict to a T what she would do and say, but also proud for standing my ground. Let my kids be kids. No responsibilities that I as the parent should carry will be dumped on their shoulders before they are old enough for that. No negative talk about my own body aging or that of anyone else in front of them. The disgust that my mother shows for her own body, and that of others who aren't model thin is terrible. No putting other people before my kids, or having a favorite kid and actively showing this to everyone, including said kids. I'm the black sheep in my mother's life, that is her choice, but I will not put my kids through the same things. They will not have to cry in front of their partner and ask why their mother doesn't love them, just as much as they love their sibling, or why she is putting other people's needs before those of her kids, her boyfriend specifically. Stand up and speak out loud if somebody threatens to hurt them. No one who wants to hurt my kids is worthy of my time and attention. My kids will know this as well as that their mother has their back. It doesn't matter what that person's relation is to me or my kids, they will have no place in our lives. This is one of the best gifts you can give your child. I know this post is mainly aimed at behavioral issues, but it wasn't clarified, so here goes my most important one. My mother has a mitochondrial illness and I don't yet know if have it or not. But it is messed up that you grow up not knowing your mother as a healthy person. When the only version of her that you remember is sick, when it was not usual for her to not be able to run and could barely walk too. In 2007 she got the wrong medication and they almost killed her. At the time she was told she had about 10 years left. Fortunately she's still alive and seems like the doctors were wrong and only the medication made her situation so hopeless then. Hoping for the best still. The uncertainty of not knowing whether you have it or not, and if you do, to what extent it's going to impact your life, is what I don't want. I want my future child to know a healthy me, one who wasn't told that I'm going to die in 10 years. One who is able to run, one who is able to keep up. And also one who cannot pass this illness down to them. One directly resulting from her being disabled is that she is basically trapped in a relationship with my stepdad who used to abuse us all emotionally, because we wouldn't be able to support ourselves without his help at the moment. So, this is the other big one. Financial independence. The idea that everything is my daughter's fault. My mom tried to install a sense of personal responsibility in me by constantly pointing out that my choices have consequences and that foreseeable consequences were therefore on me. I get that. If I leave my door open and my cats get out, it's my fault. If I leave my window down and it rains in my car, it's my fault. I teach my own kids to weigh the consequences before making a choice. But my mom's idea of foreseeable consequences was a little extreme. Any possible thing, no matter how improbable, that could happen after I did something was my fault. My brother was in a bad mood and I was rude to him and he beat me up, my fault for not being nicer. I was talking to a boy I didn't know at a party and got assaulted, my fault for talking to a stranger. I was helping a friend move and fell down and needed stitches. I'm not a mover, what business did I have even being there, so my fault. I suffer from terrible anxiety. I won't wear dresses because they could blow up. I don't drive in cities because I could get lost and wind up in a dangerous neighborhood. Because there's a loud voice in my head that tells me that if I take my kids to the park and we get in a wreck on the way, it wouldn't have happened if I'd stayed home, so it's my fault. I'll never do that to my kids. Ever. Do you agree with any of these points? Recognize any from your life? Let me know in the comments below. I'm sure there are dozens of people who feel the same. If you like this video you should subscribe to the channel, maybe just check out the recommended video for more content just like this.